Hello, everyone. We are having all sorts of technical problems this morning, and I can't sit on a pillow because my cat is in the chair behind me. So we're just going to do the best we can, and I'll try to hold myself up above the thing so you can even see who's talking to you. Hello, guys. This is Real Talk with Martha Novak. I am Sid Martha Novak, and we're talking about boundaries and dignity and self-respect, which are incredibly important things. I'm still laughing about all the right at the end. I hope you guys are doing well, and I hope everybody's feeling better. We talked to one of you, which is our friend, last week, and she was like I was. She was getting over was it Omicron or Omicron? Anyway, we were getting over that. And I think I probably still am getting over that, just in terms of the exhaustion that comes with that virus. There really is a thing. Hey, baby. So, let's do a quick prayer. Put us all on the same page. That'll help me a lot. And then we're going to launch into some new material about this extremely important subject. Boundaries, dignity, and self-respect. I think also that these are things that get confused. We never talk about them and define them, do we? So I think that it's time to do that now, okay? So that you're using very precise language to talk about yourself and what you're doing. Hi, guys. Oh, I'm so glad all of you all are with me today. I see my good friend up there, too, which is a lovely thing. Dear God, thank you so much for the opportunity of all of us coming together and opening ourselves to see, hear, sense, and know what you would have us do for ourselves as we open to the truth that lies in our enlightenment. We ask that whatever is said today, from me, from you, because this is a live show, that something really hits our understanding on a deeper level, that we may truly know what we should do to change, grow, evolve, become happier, and contribute to this world as our potential. So we now ask that we are open to knowing what these things are. Come on. And we thank you so much for that opportunity and that openness in us. And we see, hear, sense, and know what you would have us do on a deeper level as we open to this truth that lies in your enlightenment. And so it is. Amen. So the cat jumped down, the dog jumped up. Keep praying. All right, kids. It's very nice to be with you. So let's get to work, because we've got a lot to say. I have a feeling that we may not hit everything today, but I think it's extremely important for us to finish up probably next week with what we're doing. All right. I found an interesting article. Again, my job is deeper levels of consciousness, in that some healing. It is not just to make you feel better psychologically. So I really do try to change sometimes the wording or explain where I'm coming from sometime in these articles. It's not a disrespect to them. We do different things, you see. And I'm just trying to certainly honor what I'm supposed to be doing here with you. I found an article that I liked a lot by Hannah Rose. She, I think, is an author of Working Through Shame, and shame is a part of all this. You keep in mind that's one of the reasons we don't have good boundaries. What struck me about this article, 5 Steps to Better Emotional Boundaries, was kind of the subtitle, which was How to Stop Taking Care of Everyone Else and Start Taking Care of Ourselves. Yes, I think that's a good idea. There are a lot of reasons that we take care of other people's problems, especially when we don't want to get to ours. It's a great avoidance tactic. so that we don't have to change, grow, shift, evolve, deepen, and do all the things that, in truth, is our nature to do. We can say we are so sensitive we feel another's pain. The truth is, honeys, and we've got to say this, it's all about us. It's never about not wanting to tell somebody the truth because it may hurt them. No, it's always about we don't want their reaction. We don't want to have to deal with the drama. We're afraid of what they're going to say or do to us. We may be hurt. And I think that's a really important grown-up thing for us to go on and admit, because this is all about us. And while we may think that we are so sensitive or so this or so that, and we are, I'm not denying that, there are ulterior motives deep within our own psyche that are limiting us and causing us to do what we do. Now, we're going to talk a lot about those things today, and they are quite deep. I like this line that this woman said, Hannah Rose, is your life unmanageable as a result of others' pain? It's just simply, she goes on to say, a reflection of poor emotional boundaries. And that's what we need to talk about today. So first thing I want to say is I like this article because it teaches you how to cultivate better emotional boundaries. And I have a few things to say about it myself. Okay. I think the first thing that you must do is identify where you are lacking emotional boundaries. And to do that, darlings, you've got to be completely honest with yourself emotionally. You know, I've said in other radio shows that we would never take money out of somebody else's bag or wallet, and yet we lie to ourselves all the time emotionally. And part of your journey to self, to the authentic self, and deeper levels of consciousness and even enlightenment, if you go far enough, is being aware that of your lies to yourself, of your self-deception. So she can say, identify where you're lacking emotional boundaries, and that's a good one. But you better have trained yourself to be honest emotionally with yourself. So she goes on to say about this subject, is it with a specific friend, family member, colleague at work, or all of the above? Is there a tendency to become more invested in people who are struggling with a specific issue that you have had experience with? What is the ultimate goal of your doing this? What's the emotional trigger underneath the behavior? You know, I had a friend years and years and years ago. I mean, I'm talking maybe 50, 60 years ago, as a child primarily and in high school, who liked me a lot when I had something going on in my life that was difficult. She never quite helped with it, but she liked the drama of it. It was really interesting, and I realized she didn't like it so much when everything was going well. Isn't that interesting? Here's a really, I think, important note that this Hannah Rose comes up with. She said the emotional trigger for her has typically been that she thinks she knows what's best for the other person. Then she starts to take on their pain as her own. And she said when she was working on herself, she missed the opportunities to be genuinely empathetic because she was thinking about how to best help and save them. Well, guys, there's an arrogance to this, isn't there? Because I can't tell what's best for you. This work that I do here is just about putting certain psychology on the table. I'm telling you honestly what worked for me. I'm telling you what seems to work for Hannah Rose. But guys, this is not at the expense of your knowing. You know, deep inside, the path that you must follow, you see. Okay, number 2. She goes on to say, you must identify what is blocking you from detaching. And she goes on to say that one of her favorite quotes is by Rumi, who I love too. Rumi was a poet centuries ago, quite the philosopher. And this quote says, your task is not to seek for love, but merely to seek and find all the barriers within yourself that you have built against it, which I do love. I rarely take exception to Rumi. So the second step, according to her, is to identify what is internally going on that is blocking you from detaching from, say, the family of origin and setting a boundary with yourself. And you keep in mind that after 3 months, your workplace becomes your family of origin. Have you seen that? Of course you have. That's the way it works. And the reason we are so attracted to that, even though we didn't have the happy family of origin necessarily, and there were problems there, is because we're still trying to work it out. But if you keep attracting that over and over again, and in your unconsciousness playing it out over and over again, where's the learning experience and the evolvement out of it? Because you're supposed to get out of it, you see? Okay. She goes on to say, do you feel stuck? Have you inadvertently signed up for a caretaking role in this relationship or in your friendships? Are you telling yourself, they're my family, I can't detach from them? I have found over and over again in my work that being blood with someone means absolutely nothing. First of all, your blood turns over and you're completely new. I've forgotten what the exact amount of minutes is, but guys, come on. And sweeties, you're supposed to go on and evolve and develop your own thing, whether it's your own family or your own ideas of work or your own. I mean, this is a unique experience and you've got a potential that you need to share. It isn't in doing the same thing over and over again and attaching to the old family and playing out the old problems without solution. She goes on to say it's incredibly empowering to remember that we didn't sign up for any relationship with anybody, not even your family. And they just don't have to be there if you don't want them to. If you are miserable at work, what in the world is blocking you from leaving? If you are in a one-sided friendship, what's blocking you from walking away? If you feel responsible for the well-being of others, what's blocking you from accepting that you don't have that kind of power or responsibility? Number 3, she says we've got to do everything we can as evolving human beings to break those barriers down, the answers to those questions that I just gave you. She says there are many ways to get to this, of course. She has found that therapy helps her. There are so many ways that people find the answers to themselves. Keep going, though, if you don't have them yet. That's the bottom line. Just keep going. You haven't gone far enough. You will eventually. Number 4. And guys, I want to say one more thing about that. Not telling secrets, not speaking of skeletons in the closet, keeping all that quiet, being the person that holds that together with some sort of glue that only you do in the family. It's just not healthy. It's really important to talk about these things. I'm not saying that you should necessarily tell secrets that would hurt another. That's not what I'm saying. But you see, there, to the child's mind, you're either holding those secrets or you're telling them and destroying everything, when there's a middle ground, which is making your peace with things. I'm going to diverge from this just a second and say that's the point to everything, is making your peace with everything. Real peace is found in your authentic self. Real peace is found by being who you really are. And I think of a couple of movies that come to mind. They made really good movies because of the unrest that the protagonists, the lead characters, had in them. I think there was one called 12 O'Clock High, if I'm not mistaken, and I may have this wrong. It was a Gregory Peck film. It was a war film. And he played a soldier that, was high-ranking soldier, and he had to send his boys off to be killed, quite frankly. It was certainly something that he could not ultimately live with. And in other words, at one point, it went against his developing values as a humanist, probably. And that didn't end well for him because that peace could not be found. I think of one other movie, too, which was Sophie's Choice, if you all saw that. Now, guys, when I talk about movies, I want you to know I'm always going to give you a spoiler alert. Spoiler alert, this does not end well. But it's a real important thing to talk about because when we're talking about your values and who you are as a person, if you haven't asked yourself these questions, if you haven't done some of these exercises that we're talking about to find your values, which we've talked about and I'll mention in this show, but we've certainly talked about in other shows, now's the time, right? In Sophie's Choice, Sophie was a woman in Poland, as I remember. It's been a number of years since I'd seen this film. And she had 2 little kids, and she was Jewish, and she was being loaded on the trains to go to the camps. She had a little girl in her arms, a little boy by her side, I think, that she was holding in her hand, with her hand. And she ran up to one of the Nazis and said, please let us go, please let us go. And he said, I will if you give me one of the children to put on the train, by the way. What was interesting about this film is she got more and more reactive because, first of all, it's chaos. Families are being separated. All sorts of crazy stuff is going on. It's nighttime. It's scary. He's yelling at her. She's attracting attention in a dangerous situation. We can go on with that list probably. Anyway, what's happening is her energy, which is clearly in the ego child's mind, is getting more and more and more reactive. In other words, she is not thinking. This is not the time to think. This is the way the script is written. She reacts, and she finally screams, take the girl, and runs away with the little boy. the rest of the movie is that she can't live with that. Now, here's the exciting thing about the work we do. First of all, you're never going to be in a situation like that. Thank God. Thank God. But you do have to know yourself very well to make good decisions in your life based on your values. Now, that you have not, well, welcome to the club. I haven't either. But this is part of our growing up and our maturing and our becoming emotionally and spiritually mature. All of a sudden, we find out what our values are. We live within them. It's an exercise because we're not used to living within them, you see. So one of the things that I want to suggest to you, which I've suggested before, is get on the internet, look under lists of values, choose the longest one you can, acknowledging to yourself that everything is either fear-based or love-based, or a combination of both, depending on which mind you're in, the ego child's mind, fear-based, the higher self mind, love-based. Which of three values, only choose three, can you argue right now, and and can you live within those three values consistently? And what I mean by that, can you bring them into every argument you have, every discussion? Can you bring them into the boardroom? Can you bring them into your house when you're alone? Can you be 100% those things? Because if you can't, you gotta work on yourself. Because we're not used to thinking about these things, these values, right? And that's a really big part of where your boundaries lie, you see. She goes on to say, which is step number 4, find grounding tools that help you maintain your boundaries. I've skipped ahead because one of the big grounding tools, I think, for everybody are what your values are. It's interesting because nobody talks about this. So it's really important that we talk about it now. What are your values that you are compatible with living within? And here's a warning. You're going to try to choose values that you're not, that you just want to be. Don't do that. That's the mask you're wearing. This has got to be the essential who you are. Please take that as the best advice I can give you about values. Many people work with therapists, various kinds of therapists. You can work with energy workers like me. You can work with psychologists, psychiatrists. You can work with ministers. There are people out there that will help you. Don't be afraid to leave them. What a question. What a thing to say, huh? But we tend to, unless we found somebody that is dedicated to their own personal growth, you're going to outgrow them. You just will. Okay? So don't be afraid to move on, to find somebody who challenges you more as you go through. And also, I cannot discount how valuable true friends really are. True friends. All right, what do I mean by that? Well, the ego child's mind is going to try to find friends that validate what they already believe in the ego child's mind. And that's just simply not going to help anybody. When classes form of new students, I always see this, and I really will move into that friendship. I mean, I would never move into a friendship in real life, but let me tell you, in class, when we've got something to do and we've got some place to go, that's not allowed. I can't let someone validate the ego child's mind in another person and vice versa. And that's what they want, you see. Most of these people wash out in the beginning class, though. You can't do that. This is about learning. It's interesting because now in my advanced classes, everybody is so supportive of everybody else, but in a higher self-sense. Everybody accepts exactly how people are right now. We all know that we're evolving and growing, And it's a lovely experience, but quite a different one than many, many, many years ago in beginning classes. Guys, every human being craves some semblance of control, right? And acknowledging that we are powerless over others can be terrifying to the ego child's mind that had a bad experience in the early childhood home. But the fear-based mind has got to change, if you're going to do this work, to the love-based mind. A change of mind is required. And I've often said this in my advanced class. Here's the interesting thing. The ego child's mind cannot fix the ego child's mind. Now, at one point, having you talk yourself out of things is valuable, and the ego child's mind's fixing the ego child's mind. You'll confront your lies and say, yes, that is a lie I'm telling myself, so what is the truth? It's very important at one point. Thank you, sweetheart, for that heart. But as we grow, and we are growing inside, you see, you're ready for something else, and that is the difference between the ego child's mind and the higher self. In other words, the ego child's mind just tells the story over and over and over again. And the higher self mind recognizes at one point the story's got to die. It's got to be put down. And what takes its place? This moment. And being fully present. And being loving, or seeing what's going on in the ego child's mind, if that's what's going on. In other words, the moment takes the place of the story. Okay? Okay. She goes on to say, and I think this is probably important to acknowledge. She says, if you're not feeling the pain of another person, aren't you detached and callous? And we all say, absolutely bloomin' not. No, you are not. It's the new thing to do. And do you understand that the higher self always has a reason for doing anything? There's only one reason for doing anything, and that is because it's the right thing to do. It's the right thing to do. As a soul, as a person, it's the right thing to do for you to do. Okay, I want to go on to the next article, but thank you very much for that one. Before I go on into another article, I thought we ought to make some definitions. You might want to write these things down, kids, because they are a little confusing, because in our unawareness, we've kind of lumped all these words together. Okay? So, scurry around, find a pencil and paper. I think this is a really important piece of information, and we are going to go into all these words, so it's nice to know what we're talking about, huh? By definition, a boundary is anything that marks a limit. Psychological limits define personal dignity. Letting you guys write. Okay, next thing. Dignity is not the same thing as self-respect. Dignity is our inherent value and worth as human beings, and everybody is born with it. Respect, on the other hand, whether it's self-respect or respect from others, is earned through one's actions. And taking this a step further, self-respect comes from living with your values, and it supports character. And I want to mention this to you now because self-esteem is thrown around a lot. And I want you to understand what self-esteem is. Self-esteem is a term used to reflect a person's overall emotional evaluation of his or her worth. It is a judgment of oneself, and I think you could make a case it's also an attitude toward the self. I think those things are important to have in front of you as we dive into this on a deeper level. I think that self-esteem is an umbrella term. Do you know what I mean by that? My class and I always say umbrella term, and that means it's too general. We need to break these down into, I don't have good boundaries. I don't know what dignity even is. I have no self-respect. That kind of thing we need to address enormously specifically. Okay, I've got someone who's calling in. Why don't we go to this person? And then this is a 607 exchange, and then we'll go back into discussing dignity. Hello, are you there? This is Martha. Nope. I think they just dropped away. Do keep in mind, and I should say this to all of you, sweet folks, that if you are calling into the number 347-850-1647, that's going to get you on the air with me. And if you just want to listen, you can go to Blog Talk Radio, Facebook Live, and just put in Real Talk with Martha Novak, or go to my website, which is marthanovak.com, and go under radio shows, and there's a button that should take you in either to Blog Talk Radio or Facebook Live and the live show. It's fine if you want to call in. I can't take too many of you calling into the wrong number, but that's why I think people go, oh, I'm about to be on the air. I don't want that. Okay. I found an article by Donna Hicks. I like Donna Hicks. I think she's a nice person. I don't know why I say that. I like the way she writes. And she wrote an article called What is the Real Meaning of Dignity? And goes on to say that few people realize its extraordinary impact in our lives. And I do want to say, guys, the reason I hung up some of these articles, some are more obscure than others, is because you don't talk about this anywhere. I mean, you may not even get into this in therapy. It depends on how deep your therapist is going to go. We've got to ask some questions of you that don't get asked otherwise, okay? And I hope you'll understand that and like that and go, I never thought about that. I must think about that. So she goes on to say that dignity is not the same as respect. Dignity is our inherent value and worth as human beings. I know I'm repeating myself here. Everybody's born with it. Respect, on the other hand, is earned through one's actions, and I put on the table, the actions are often living within your values. Okay. Everybody in the world recognizes that human beings have a deep desire to be treated as something of value. But it starts, guys, with you treating yourself that way. To treat yourself that way and to really understand that, your story has got to be challenged. Our shared desire as human beings for dignity transcends really all our differences, putting our common human identity above everything else. And while our uniqueness is important, our shared humanity is more important to realize. It's something, interestingly enough, I see that as people are opening this and moving past the child's mind and opening to the higher self, this thing that was always there absolutely becomes of great meaning to you. In that oneness with all life, there is a self-acceptance of yourself and other people. There's a mutual recognition of the desire to be seen, heard, listened to, treated fairly, to be recognized, to be understood as much as anybody can understand anybody else, and to feel safe in the world. Through self-acceptance, who you really are, good, bad, and indifferent, we're granted a sense of freedom and independence and a life filled with hope and possibility. As we get a little further into this, I'm going to connect the dots a little more, so stay with me, okay? One of the things I want you to understand is dignity, and having dignity is never about anyone but you. It's about you and your relationship to you. It's your relationship to yourself. No one has this kind of authenticity, their true dignity, without work on the self. We all wear masks. Sometimes the masks are very thick. Sometimes the masks are very thin. Nevertheless, it is designed for us to discover our innate value and uniqueness in work on the self. Another article, which I thought was very good, was called Personal Dignity, Don't Believe You're Special, but Don't Believe You're Inferior, which I, of course, got my attention. I thought it was great. And it talks about something that I think it's very important to talk about. She goes on to say, who wrote this? I'm not sure who wrote this particular thing. Hang on, let me get to the end. Oh, Jennifer Delgado. Jennifer Delgado. The definition of personal dignity refers to the value and respect for oneself as a human being. On one hand, it means treating ourselves with respect. On another hand, it implies that we must treat each other with respect, seriousness, responsibility, and kindness. Personal dignity, she goes on to say, is an indicator of how we value ourselves. That's why we started with know what your values are. It also is an indicator of the level of esteem we profess for ourselves and the extent to which we're willing to defend ourselves and prevent being trampled on, humiliated, and degraded. The image we have of ourselves, the value we give ourselves, and the respect we profess for ourselves are constantly reflected and validated in the relationships we establish in the world. If you're seeing something exteriorly, it is an indication of doing something on the interior that needs to be brought to consciousness, needs to be acknowledged, and needs to be addressed. If we allow others to continue to violate our rights, we do not respond to the humiliations, and we continue to let them humiliate us, sooner or later, our inner dignity will be damaged. Psychology used to talk about inner dignity and outer dignity. Outer dignity being what people do to you, inner dignity of being being what we do or don't do to ourselves. I don't like those terms very much because it's all the same thing. The outer always reflects the inner, you see? Just the way everything is made energetically. The outer always rejects the inner. The experience, she goes on to say, of dignity, understood as the feeling of worth, requires that there be someone who understands and recognizes those values and shows respect for them. Guess who that person is? It's you. It's you. We're so busy worrying about getting that from other people, we don't realize that the only one that's missing that's not doing that is us. Okay. When we don't know about our own dignity and don't respect it, and we find that others around us are not respecting it either, we run the risk of falling into an emotional spiral that is certainly marked by humiliation, manipulation, abuse, and excessive demands that will make us feel smaller, insignificant, and lacking in value. And depression. It can be a very severe depression. It can be a moderate depression. It can be a light depression. But guys, the bottom line is that's just not good for us. And many times, and I want to call you on this, many times our accepting all that is quite deliberate. Our ego child's minds indulge in it over and over and over again. It keeps us tied to our story. It gives us the opportunity to be the victim and tell our story to ourselves ad nauseum. It's deliberate. We are choosing it. Why would you choose it? And the irony here is, was it that great to choose it over and over again? We're choosing it over and over again. It's a way to hurt ourselves over and over again, to punish ourselves, to really abuse ourselves over and over again. We actually lose dignity every time we, number one, allow ourselves to be systematically humiliated and mistreated by others, or, by the way, by ourselves. We actually lose dignity, number two, every time we become conformist or settle and accept less. Number three, we lose dignity every time we allow ourselves to be manipulated and boycotted by those around us. By the way, you can manipulate yourself. And we actually lose dignity when we lose respect and stop loving each other. When we allow things that interfere with our true love for others. Do you understand that? Do you understand that? If someone is humiliating you consistently and you're taking it, it is destroying your love for them, and love is all you are. You are letting that happen. What about self-preservation and preserving that very spiritual, very dynamic part of you that is truly who you are? You can't let other people do that. Don't you understand? That's something you want to keep. Okay. No one can or should use you. Oh, you allow it from time to time. Yeah, we all do. But you've got to find out why you're allowing it and what you might be getting out of it. Sometimes people allow that because they live a very harsh existence with a lot of self-criticism, And when something like this happens and they just are decimated by it, they hold on to this pattern because they have a system by which they soothe themselves when this happens. And here's the irony. That's the only time they ever get any soothing. So they perpetually do the cycle, you see, instead of breaking it once and for all. Learning how to treat yourself better each moment. I think we lose dignity also when we settle, and many of us have been trained to settle. I know a woman who certainly defined her early childhood home as a prison camp. She called her mother a Nazi. I remember her mother saying to her that laughter and cutting up and being silly and funny was not allowed. It was only for monkeys. Okay. The reason I told you that story is she has had a life of settling. She has had a life of settling. If it's up to her, she settles. If she's riding along on somebody else's life and coattails and enjoying that, she rides along. But she's not creating anything of her own. Do you understand? She gives up before she creates anything, really. Guys, you settle by having people not respect and love you for who you are. You settle when you don't tell them who you are and show them who you are. It's up to us, isn't it? I remember years ago when I was doing a lot of public speaking, and I still do a lot of it, but what do I say here? I'm thinking of one particular instant. I went and sang for an old age home. I'd love to do that. When my dad was living, I certainly did a lot of that. I used to be an actor and singer. And it was funny because I would walk into this room and be setting up and everything, and they're just people that perpetually look gloomy and wear scowls and are negative and everything. And boy, you see it when we're in our old age and our dotage, right? And I always made a concerted effort to go over and talk to them. The interesting thing was that was a mask, and it usually dropped away immediately when they felt somebody was caring about them. But how many of us are still walking away, making judgments about what we see on the surface, right? And we personalize that, take it inside and say, oh, they don't like me. Oh, instead of going out and showing them who you are and giving that to them so they can give you something back, which is who they are without the mask. A marvelous exercise. I was real proud of somebody in my class yesterday when she said sometimes she feels judgment from sales clerks. Whether or not it's there or not, this was kind of an old pattern of hers. And it was very nice of her to share that. And I said, well, what are you doing now about it? And this is what I was so proud about. She said, I realize that they have a life too. They're having a day too, good, bad, or indifferent. And I go over and talk to them and find out who they are and what their story is. Wow, I loved that. I love that. In other words, she's really being the loving person she is to someone else, right? And consequently, to her, because the ego child's mind really doesn't do that very well. It's manipulation in the ego child's mind. In the higher self mind, that's just a loving, right thing to do, you see? Motivation is always the thing that reveals, oh, I haven't, okay, come on. Hop up. Come on. All right. This is Tuffle with a feather in his hair. He's decided to go native. Okay. The next way we settle is we allow our basic rights to be violated, either as individuals, either by individuals or by institutions. Guys, you gotta know when to speak up. And by the way, when to keep quiet. I think it's really important. All of these articles about you speaking up, but how many times have we heard someone say, I have to say my truth? Well, there's no more egoic expression than that, guys. No, sometimes you don't. Sometimes you just need to know what you believe and hold that within. I think there's an awful lot of saying what we think when we don't need to, especially in social media. We're crossing boundaries all the time. And another way of settling is not developing our potential to the maximum, limiting ourselves by living in a narrow comfort zone. Yep, I fully agree with that one. But she goes on to say that excessive dignity does not make us more worthy. That's just narcissism, isn't it, darlings? We can't overcompensate for feeling bad. We've got to find out the real truth of us. That's the spiritual way. That's this evolvement of us as human beings. Oh, it's easy for us to overcompensate and go into some sort of narcissistic ideas of ourselves when we are younger. But you guys are at the place, certainly listening to the show today, where you're not, this can't be an overreaction anymore. They're both fantasies, that you are no better than the bottom of a dirty bird cage, or that you are a queen of the world or king of the world. Guys, no, neither one of those are true. They're all fantasy. And what is true is there's a wonderful self there that you're not developing, or that you're developing according to how you are doing it, that needs to be explored and deepened and supported by you. Okay. We have to, how do I want to say this? Because I was reading what she said and it wasn't something I could use. We've got to stop using people and calling it something else. For example, we have to stop attaching to people and calling that friendship when we don't make true connections. Attachment always has under it, I may need these people one day. I may need them to do for me. When it's not a loving experience out of the higher mind. You understand? We just have to call things what they are. When you work with me, and when you work with my team, we understand. We don't have any judgment about who you are. I'm not going to let you stay there in something like that. But I'm not judging you for attaching rather connecting. That tells me to go for certain things that we need to clear for you, so that you can make a true connection with other people. What's going to happen ultimately with your dignity is, as you deepen in consciousness, we realize we're one with all life. That's a powerful thing, when we realize we're all the same. We're all one. We have different expressions of it, but we're all one with everything. Good, bad, and indifferent, by the way, when we say, I'm the same as Hitler, yes and no. I mean, we all are human, huh? But we're making different choices because we choose those different choices from the highest self most of the time. And even in the ego child's mind. And I want to address something that this article brought up for me, and then we're going to leave this article and go on. And that is, I want to talk about the word deserving. I think this is really important. You might want to write some of these ideas down if you find them valuable at all. The idea of deserving, we deserve this. I want to say that makes no sense at all. We don't deserve anything. You don't deserve anything, and neither do I. We use that word, and it means nothing to our highest self. Nobody deserves anything. So how did this start, and what replaces it? Well, it's based on these old ideas of God and religion and our beliefs that we must do something to earn God's favor. I find that ridiculous. Now, many people in this world still believe that. A lot of the dogma that is being taught in religions are based on that. You've got to earn God's favor. Now, I don't believe that. Now, I'm not saying you've got to believe what I believe. I'm saying you need to ask yourselves a question, see what you do believe, okay? But here's what I believe. I believe because of the way we are psychologically structured, and because we are having this great opportunity to transcend and move from ultimately the ego child's mind to the highest self mind, I don't think that we earn anything. I think we open to the beneficence of God. We open to who God really is. We open to those wonderful things that are part of that. I don't think we earn it. I think we open to it by the work and the awareness and the consciousness that is all intrinsic to us. Number 2, I don't like the word deserving because it intrinsically says, it says something is intrinsically wrong with you, and that you have to overcome in some way what is wrong with you. And I don't think anything's wrong with you. I think you are the perfect system as God designed it. And that all of this change and growth and the opportunity to do so, and you're saying yes to it or no, because people have the choice to do that too, is all perfect because it's one big learning experience here, and it continues once we shake off the mortal coil. Number 3, I think when we use the word deserving, it denies the fact that all of this, everything, is intrinsically in you. And we just need to open it and open to it deeper and deeper and deeper levels. And that, after all, is the esoteric journey, right? Okay, good. So I had to put my 2 cents worth in there. Okay, guys, let's talk about self-esteem and self-respect. I do want you to know, and this, by the way, is from an article by Ellen J. Langer, Langer. It was called Self-Esteem versus Self-Respect. She starts, and I think this is so right. Our culture is concerned with matters of self-esteem. Oh boy, howdy. You bet. Self-respect, on the other hand, is never talked about. And it's the one thing that's going to give you the peace of mind that you seek. To esteem anything is to evaluate it positively and hold it in high regard. But evaluation gets us in trouble because while we sometimes win, we also sometimes lose. And while we may be great, is somebody greater or lesser, or we are, it's based on a faulty system. To respect something, on the other hand, is to accept it. And, of course, the most important part of that is accepting you. Acceptance is something wonderful. It opens in your work on yourself. And it's so important that it does. I want you to know it's part of this. You might not be going for self-acceptance when you do the work on yourself. As a matter of fact, when you're doing consciousness work, you're kind of not going for anything. You're just going for whatever the next level is. But self-acceptance does happen along the way. And it is so beyond your belief in limitations. It is just about, let's bring all of me back, good, bad, and indifferent. I'm okay with it all. I'm at peace with it all now. And I'll tell you why that's so important. It's important energetically, not just to make you happy. You know, we want you to be happy. But this is about bringing all your energy back and being okay with it and having it available to manifest anything you want. You see, if you're constantly taking this little piece of you and you don't like that, so you push that away. Let's say I don't like my thighs. Push that away. I really don't like them. I'm one day, maybe when I have enough time and money, going to do something about it, we say. All right? Oh, I don't like this, and it makes me appear weak when I'm really vulnerable and I feel like I don't know what I know. Instead of learning more, I want to cover that up. Don't let anybody see that. And in a relationship, gee, I can't be vulnerable. I can't look like I need somebody. I can't look like I'm that human because I may be hurt. That's been my experience. Guys, all of these things and an infinite number of more are valid reasons we do what we do, but they cannot exist now in full self-acceptance. Don't you understand? You're going to resolving all of these things so you can just say, well, I'm who I am. I know my values. I know my boundaries. I have personal dignity because I am sure that from the start I existed with certain rights imminent in me. And I live that way. I know now because I know what they are when somebody steps over the line. I don't have to be belligerent about it, have my hand in the air and be the ego child's mind saying, get back over the line. I can tease them about it. I can tell them. Or I can move away. And if they're not that important to me, I can walk away and never give it a second thought. You see? Okay. The person with self-respect, simply put, just likes themselves. Just likes her or himself. This self-respect is not contingent on success or what other people find valuable about you. They know that if they have success, they have failures. And it's not a result of comparing yourself to others and finding yourself superior or less than. Hi, Peter. Well, come on and join this video. We'd love to have you. These things that I just mentioned, you know, making yourself more than, less than, more successful, less successful, all of this thing that we do to ourselves in comparison is a tactic employed to increase your self-esteem because self-respect hasn't been worked on. And here's the weird thing, is self-respect is really built into you. But you can be totally trained out of it. So much so that it's buried deeply. It's never, by the way, not there. When we are worried about things or we're trained in our early childhood home not to have something, we bury it. And my job, and the job of many therapists, is just to give that back to you. Start unearthing it. Find out all the reasons you buried it. Say, okay, you still want to do this? No, we all say. And we go on. Self-respect and the acceptance that goes with it can't be based on resignation either. If you find yourself resigned and depressed out of resignation. You've got to realize that what you're telling yourself is that you can't change and your circumstances can't change. It's a blatant lie. When are you going to get tired of that? Right? Okay. With self-respect, we like ourselves just because of who we are, and not because of what we can or cannot do, or what we have done or have not done. I remember one of my dearest friends who's now dead. His name was Mel Glass. Mel was an actor and an impresario in the theater, and he also did a lot of directing, and he was wonderful to know. Every time I get with friends, and we had a mutual friend, and Mel, we always get real misty-eyed in talking about him. Oh my God, what a wonderful man. And you know who he is, by the way, because if you ever saw the old commercial that was, I can't believe I ate the whole thing. Remember that man sitting on the side of the bed saying that in the Alka-Seltzer commercial? Well, that was my friend Mel. So now you know him too. Okay. He was adorable. Did a lot of Broadway. A great guy. Well, Mel told me something when I was in the theater years ago, and I'm going to pass it on to you. I think I got a really good review about a part I was doing. And he must have sensed that I might have been getting a little cocky or arrogant with it. And he said, you know, Martha, if you believe the good reviews, you also have to believe the bad reviews. So the best thing you can do is in the moment, do the best thing you know, do the best you can. And don't believe anything that anybody else says. Just focus on the moment and be the best you can be. I offer that to you too. Be the most loving person you can be. And don't let anything interfere with that love, guys. You are letting things interfere with that. You see, when you let people cross your boundaries, pull your dignity down or affect it in any way, or not respect you, and you're not respecting yourself, what you're doing is you're having feelings, whether you know them or not, of resentment and anger, and you may bury it, and you may say, oh, I'm not angry, oh, I'm not resentful. Well, look again, because yes, you are. It's just not healthy. And then we wonder why we're depressed, right? Well, that's why. Okay. You have to leave the evaluative framework that trying to get high self-esteem gives you. Because there's always somebody that can do it better or worse. You're often the one that can do it better or worse. That's just not healthy. Those they have found when they've done tests on people, psychological tests, those with healthy, I should say, self-respect instead of high self-esteem are less prone to blame, to guilt, to regret, to lies, to secrets, and to stress. Real important to find self-respect. And I found another article that I liked very much, another 2 articles, I think, on respect. This article is by Irina Yuge. It was for Mind Valley. She wrote quite an extensive blog. The name of the article is This is Why Self-Respect is Crucial for Happiness. She says, self-respect forms the foundations of all our decisions. It does. How you treat yourself and how you allow yourself to be treated by others. We've talked about the difference between self-respect and self-esteem. I'm going to put this reminder on the table. That self-esteem is knowing you can conduct yourself confidently in every situation. Outwardly, you're successful. It contributes to your self-esteem. But it's possible to experience and act with self-esteem while having little self-respect. The problem with just relying on self-esteem or being caught up in the evaluative framework that we just referred to is the moment you have a bad day, you doubt yourself and you fall prone to blame, guilt, regret, stress, whatever went on in your early childhood home, by the way. It's back. Self-respect is the respect you have for yourself, while ego is your understanding of your own importance, or, by the way, lack of importance. Because the ego child's mind, which is a huge part of the ego, is in the evaluation framework. An inflated ego may be born from too much self-esteem, or when you realize just how important and special you are, inspired by what? Let's call it what it is, kids. Mental imbalances, okay? Emotional imbalances. People with huge egos sometimes feel unequal to others, of course, because deep inside they feel worthless and undeserving of respect. They cover it up with being arrogant. They cover it up, because they're covering up their insecurities. But when you respect yourself, your ego is still naturally present. You cannot get rid of the ego. The ego is serving you, okay? But what does diminish and sometimes completely clear out and work on the self is the ego child's mind that propels you to think like a child, you see? The ego in its natural state without the inflated ego child's mind plays a huge part, does not play a huge part in your day-to-day activities. The person with self-respect simply likes themselves, and it's not contingent on anything they're doing and their successes and failures. You just like yourself, okay? While it's important, this article goes on to say, did I say who this author was? Yes, this is Irina Bugay's article. I thought it was a pretty good article. I'm watching the time too. While it's very important, guys, to respect your partner when you're in a relationship, it's equally important to respect yourself too. Now, I've covered a few of these points when we've talked about, and we've done radio shows on relationships, but I think now that we're talking about this subject, self-respect, I think it's important that we address these things. And I may repeat myself here or there. Self-respect certainly is the foundation of all healthy relationships and strong ones. When you accept yourself as a whole person with flaws and strengths, you're becoming, you are aware of yourself as the authentic you, the real deal. Right? I don't think there is a higher compliment, because nobody starts out being the real deal. But when somebody says to me or to you, yeah, I'm comfortable with you, you really seem to be the real deal, that really is a lovely compliment. It means you are working on yourself, and you'll continue to do so, certainly, because that's your intention. When you know who you are and how much you're worth, you won't let anyone, not even your partner, treat you poorly. By the way, everybody crosses the line from time to time, and in love, you say, crossing the line. Here's where the line is. Now, here's the rub. When you have not worked on yourself, you don't know where that line is. Their problems are your problems are their problems. Everybody's confused about where the line is and who stepped over what. A lot of times it's like, oh, you stepped over the line. Well, you stepped over the line. And we've just in a pit of blame, right? So the way to get clarity on this is to work on yourself more. I'll give you an example. I have a wonderful couple that have done so well in work on themselves. When they were still in their unawareness, this is how they got into arguments. Both of them came from childhoods where they blamed themselves excessively, and they also had mothers and fathers that blamed each other and everybody in the household, and certainly their own child, excessively. So, the wife may have a look on her face, or the wife is not satisfied with the way the husband does something. And so that is conveyed to him in some way. He immediately gets defensive and gets very upset because he feels like he's being blamed because he did in his childhood. Okay? She then feels excluded. Hi. Oh, Peter, are we having bugs today? Yes. Mel Blanc, God bless his soul, was the voice of Bugs Bunny. Yes, indeed. And apparently there are some bugs in my transmission today. I'm sorry about that. I hope you all are getting enough of it. And that sounded funny. I've had enough of you, they say. You might want to see if you're missing a lot of this, if Blog Talk Radio will help you more. I know you're coming through on Facebook Live. I'm sorry about that. You know, what it is up here in the mountains, we're very remote, is that we have very poor speed. It's not a question of transmitting. We had a dear friend give us some sort of booster for Christmas, which is wonderful, but it doesn't work because our speed's too slow, you see? So until something happens up here and, you know, in these remote locations, they can, help us with speed, we have a poor time. I'll tell you something else funny. I just, here we go. The first 2 weeks of every month, we get wonderful, we don't get television, by the way, but we get wonderful streaming services on our small little devices like our tablets. We can't turn on the television because it uses too much data. Now, this uses data too. But it gives us 2 weeks of data where the television would probably give us less. And what happens is by the second week, the second week of 2 weeks of every month, we turn into our big readers because we don't have any more data. We can't watch any streaming services. And it's just our lives right now. Anyway, sorry that we're having some glitches. This article goes on to say, and very well defines what happens when you lack self-respect, and she's saying, and self-love, because loving yourself really does have to do with self-respect. She says, number one, how to spot this is you're a bit of a doormat. You give without getting anything in return. And I want you all to remember this. There is no relationship you have with anybody without an exchange of energy. You have to exchange energy. If you're in a relationship with a spouse and energy is not being exchanged, you're not in a relationship. Bottom line, hard news to hear, y'all need a therapist to work this out. And you've got to see whether this other person or whether you are going to rise to the occasion. If this is friendship for friendship, if friendship isn't being returned on some level, if people aren't doing for you as much as you do for them, guys, there's an imbalance. And an imbalance is just going to breed resentment. And it is not going to be a healthy relationship. So it's extremely important to make sure that your relationships are an exchange of energy. You and I have a relationship here. I do these shows. You are kind enough to tell other people about these shows and about what we do here. That's an exchange of energy. How nice. If you're coming to me as a therapist, you're paying me. I'm doing the best I can do for you in 2 hours' time. That's an exchange of energy because money's energy, you see? So energy can present a number of different ways, but the fact is there better be an exchange of it. That's all. Okay. Number two, Another way that you don't self-respect or self-love is to lose yourself into a relationship. I've said over and over again that you need to know before you get into a relationship what your balance points are. Now, you're not going to find that on the internet. That's something that I work with in my methodology. Here's what balance points are. Balance points are the things that you do and what you essentially are and enjoy in life, that your life would be less rich if you gave up. Okay? For example, I adore people and animals. That's a bit balance point for me. I couldn't live without it either. I love beauty. Oh my gosh, I love beauty. All kinds of beauty. All right? I love fine paintings. I love everything. I love nature and the beauty of that. One of the big things that I love is creativity. I don't do anything without creativity. I don't even watch my streaming service without creativity. When I'm reading a book, things are trickling off in my own head about me as a writer. Not that I am copying them, but my God, what are the other things that this book can open my mind to? I read the news that way. Everything is a creative universe, right? So you get the idea of this. If I gave up any of those things, I'd be giving up part of me and who I really am at my essence. So the fact is, you simply must know who you are and take that into every situation and be who you really are. What are your balance points? By the way, your balance points are also your values, aren't they? If we stretch the definition out a little bit. For example, if you're in a relationship and decisions are being made without your approval or notice, and you just plod along with it, you're forgetting yourself. You're forgetting what values might be there. You can't do that. You have to be present in a relationship. You have to know who you are. You have to bring that to the relationship, and you have to make sure you're having time for that within the relationship, because we all get busy, don't we? But not at the expense of self. Number 3. Another way one lacks self-respect and self-love is by being attention-seeking. If you are wanting validation so exclusively from somebody else, you're not knowing who you are, and you're not self-validating. A lot of people wear an image to gain attention and to disguise who you really are. And that just is never going to make you happy. An image is not going to make you happy. Living who you really are and not being afraid to do that, and developing your talents, gifts, and abilities, and finding out more of them and developing those. Now we're talking about a happy life. Number 4, you overindulge in bad habits. Bad is relative, isn't it? But truly, a lot of people, again, psychologically, because we're psychologically very tricky, we make good things bad and bad things good. So, somebody may drink, drug, overeat, self-harm, punish oneself and one's body. And food and drugs are a great way to forget. But you could make it good, and not really good, by the way. This is a good example of taking a bad habit and making it good. Is saying, I really deserve to eat most of this chocolate cake because it's been a rough day. And we are putting it in the guise of soothing ourselves. Well, it's not soothing ourselves at all. You see? It's just bad for us. Too much of that, not good. we're almost finished. I'm going to have to stop right after this one, I think, because we want to, we'll have to conform to Blog Talk Radio's thing here. Time limit. Number 5, you care for people who don't care for you. You make excuses for them. I see this a lot. I see this a lot, particularly relative to somebody telling me about their childhood. People may have treated you very badly, but you'll say to me in session, oh, but they only had a 4th grade education. Oh, but they didn't have much awareness. That's actually saying, I'm not going to give this to you to work on. Because you're not fully seeing that. You're not allowing yourself to be that kid that got hurt. Somebody has to be its advocate. Now, I can talk about it, but you got to own that being your advocate. Or you're only giving me partially what I need. Can you see that it's only partially? You're saying, oh, yeah, but Mother, it's like you're saying, yes, she did do this, but I'm taking that energy back, some of that energy back because she didn't mean to. She didn't have the awareness that I have. Oh, look at that narcissism that's in there. You see? Guys, I'm going to tell you now that the finest therapies in the world are all reality-based. This therapy is reality-based. And it becomes very important for you to look at everything and everybody just as they were, and finally have you be the child's advocate. Okay? So her point is, you care for people who do not care for you. I'm not saying they didn't care for you. I'm saying, let me tell you, they didn't give you what you need. They had their own problems. For God's sake, see that. And then we have a reality to move forward from. Will you feel sorry for yourself? Well, that's your choice. The fact is, you can go get what you need now. You're perfectly capable of that. And you can. Many people have. And you will. Okay? All right. We're going to stop there, guys. And I'm going to do a little prayer for you right now. Okay? That we can move some of this out. Dear God, who is all there is, you who are all we are, and all everything is in this world, we thank you so much for the awareness that's opening now in everybody. Okay? Heal us all.
90 seconds.
Heal us all, dear God, as we open to what we need to see that we have not seen before, what we need to do, who we are at our essential best and most loving. Help us be loving this week to ourselves and to others, but let us see the harshness that we still impose on ourselves. Let us see it in full reality.
60 seconds.
That we may confront this and surrender it to you. That you may make us more loving people to ourselves and to this world. That's our potential, dear God. And we say this now in your name, in the name of the Ascended Masters, our love-centered guides and friends, and in the name of each and every person listening to this show today. We thank you so much. Guys, thank you, John. Please tell people about this show. That's what you can do for me. I really appreciate it a lot, and for my team. The more people that know about this, the better. We develop a strong community of conscious people, and that's what we're supposed to do. Oh, hey, Michelle. So good to see you, my darling. We will take this up where we left off next week, okay?
10 seconds.
Love you a lot. Mwah. Y'all be well and healthy out there, and take care of yourselves, okay? See you next week. Thank you for those hearts. God bless you. Bye.